Today, we are dissecting one of the most unsettling and frankly dangerous psychological profiles out there, the Dark Empath. And I want you to forget the usual image of a predator, someone who uses brute force. We are going way deeper, into the anatomy of someone far more insidious, a predator who operates with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, using the one thing we all value most, empathy, as their ultimate weapon.
They understand your pain better than anyone, yet they use that knowledge to intentionally hurt you. Just let that sink in for a second. How is it possible that empathy, the very thing that's supposed to build connection and kindness, can be turned into the ultimate weapon for a predator? Well, that's the dark psychological paradox we're here to unravel. This chilling blend of incredible insight and cold, calculated cruelty. And you have to get this from the start. This isn't some kind of flaw in their personality, it's a feature. It's not a bug, it's the design. And understanding that design is the first, most critical step to recognizing it and ultimately disarming it for good.
Okay, let's get into the architecture of this personality. Over the next 12 minutes, we're going to move through 6 key areas. First, we'll define exactly what makes the Dark Empath so different from other dark personalities. Then, we're going to pull apart their methodical, 3-stage abuse blueprint. From there, we'll get inside the predator's mind to really understand what drives them. And then, we pivot from just understanding to taking action. We're going to build your personal defense system with concrete tools, before finally showing you exactly how to neutralize their power by taking away their primary weapon.
So let's start by laying the groundwork. Who, or what, is a Dark Empath, really? I mean, the name itself sounds like a total contradiction, right? How can something be dark and empathetic at the same time? Well, it's that very paradox that makes this personality one of the most insidiously dangerous types out there. And they often go completely undetected, because they're experts at wearing the mask of someone who truly understands.
A Dark Empath is essentially a toxic fusion. On one side, you've got high cognitive empathy. And don't worry, we'll break that down in just a minute. On the other side, you've got this nasty cocktail of traits from the famous Dark Triad. We're talking about the ego and entitlement of narcissism, the cold, remorseless heart of psychopathy, and the strategic puppet master cunning of Machiavellianism. So just imagine for a second, you combine a narcissist's desperate need for admiration, a psychopath's inability to feel your pain, and a Machiavellian skill at pulling all the strings, and then you give that combination a superpower, the ability to read your mind emotionally speaking. It's that specific lethal blend of insight and malice that makes them such a formidable predator.
So this brings up a huge question, one that really gets to the core of this whole thing. Since we were kids, we're taught empathy is a virtue. It's the foundation of kindness, of compassion, of everything good about human connection. So how on earth can this beautiful thing be twisted and perverted into a weapon of psychological warfare? How can the very thing that's supposed to bring us together be used to tear someone apart? Well, the answer isn't that empathy is bad. It's that not all empathy is created equal. The secret is in the type of empathy they have.
See, the key difference here is between cognitive empathy and affective empathy. Affective empathy is what most of us think of when we hear the word. It's when you actually feel someone else's pain. It's a shared emotional experience. But cognitive empathy? That's all in the head. It's the intellectual ability to figure out and predict what someone else is feeling, but without actually feeling it yourself. Think of it like a super sophisticated emotional radar. It can detect the what and why of your feelings with scary accuracy, but there's no warmth, no compassion attached. For a Dark Empath, your emotions aren't a bridge to connect with you, they're just data points, information to be logged, analyzed, and eventually used against you.
And that brings us to the most crucial point. The real danger of a Dark Empath isn't just that they understand you, it's the chilling efficiency and customization of their manipulation. You see, a regular manipulator might use generic tactics, right? Flattery, guilt trips, the usual stuff. But the Dark Empath's approach is completely bespoke. It is custom-tailored to fit your exact emotional weak spots. They know precisely what you need to hear, what you're terrified of, and where all your old wounds are buried. And that level of personalization makes their attacks almost impossible to detect, because they feel so personal and they are devastatingly effective.
And they pull off this custom-tailored abuse with a few key tactics. Take something like gaslighting. For them, it's not just saying, "Oh, that never happened." No, it's saying something specifically designed to hit an insecurity they've already mapped in you, making you question your own mind. Then you've got targeted love bombing. They don't just shower you with compliments. They give you the exact praise you've been secretly dying to hear your entire life, making you feel seen like never before. And finally, emotional triangulation,
where they masterfully play people against each other. They can do this with surgical precision, because that emotional radar gives them a crystal clear map of everyone's loyalties and fears.
Okay, so we've defined the profile. Now let's deconstruct their method. Because their abuse isn't just random, chaotic cruelty. Now it's a system. It's an engineered blueprint designed for one thing and one thing only: total psychological control. Let's map it out. This whole mechanism of control unfolds in 3 very predictable stages. Think of it almost like a military operation. First, you've got the reconnaissance phase, insight mapping, where they gather all the emotional intel. Next up is the attack phase, targeted exploitation, where they weaponize everything they learned about you. And finally, you've got the occupation phase, self-doubt, where they lock you into a cycle of control, convincing you that you are the one to blame for your own misery. Let's break down each stage.
Stage 1 is insight mapping. This is their recon mission. Using that powerful cognitive empathy, that emotional radar we keep talking about, they quickly and accurately build a detailed map of your inner world. They listen so intently, not because they care, but because they're scanning you. They're looking for your core vulnerabilities, your deepest fears, your secret hopes, and most of all, your unmet needs. Now, for the person being mapped, this part feels amazing. It feels like you finally met your soulmate, someone who just gets you like no one else ever has. You feel completely seen. But what's really happening is cold, detached, psychological surveillance.
As soon as that psychological map is finished, they move to stage 2, targeted exploitation. This is where all that insight gets turned into a weapon. Their abuse is never generic. It's always meticulously customized. So for example, if they learn during the mapping phase that you have a deep fear of being seen as incompetent, their criticisms will never be about what you did. They'll be direct attacks on your intelligence. If they know you crave security, their threats will all be about creating instability. They design these attacks to hit your most precise weak points because it guarantees the maximum emotional damage with the least amount of effort. It's ruthlessly efficient.
Okay, this slide right here is a perfect example of a key tactic called conditional affection. Just listen to the structure of that sentence. You're so insightful when you agree with me. It's a shame you get so emotional when I need you to see things clearly. It's an absolute masterclass in manipulation. It starts with a compliment, targeting your desire to be seen as smart, but notice the praise is conditional. It only applies when you agree with them. The second you disagree, that praise is yanked away, and you're immediately reframed as too emotional, a liability. This shows you exactly how they weaponize your own needs against you, slowly training you to constantly seek their approval just to feel good about yourself.
And that leads us straight into the final and most devastating stage of the blueprint, self-doubt. Because the abuse is so perfectly tailored to you, it actually starts to feel believable. The Dark Empath is an expert at framing their cruelty, not as cruelty, but as a totally logical result of your flaws. And this creates a toxic feedback loop. You start to honestly believe you are the problem. So the more they hurt you, the more you question yourself. And all that pain and confusion you're feeling, that becomes their narcissistic supply. It feeds their ego. In this twisted setup, you become completely dependent on the very person causing all the chaos, because you're so confused that they still seem like the only one who truly understands the pain that they themselves are inflicting. So the blueprint is clear, but we're still left with the question of why. Why do they do this? Well, to really understand how to defend against them, we have to look at the core psychology that's driving both the predator and their target. Understanding their motivations and your own potential vulnerabilities is absolutely key to breaking the spell.
Let's look at both sides of this equation. On the predator side, the motivation is cold, simple, and all about predatory efficiency and social climbing. They aren't looking for connection, they're looking for control and status. Their empathy is just a tool, like a key to unlock a safe. They figured out how to completely decouple what they know about your feelings from any sense of a moral conscience. There's no guilt, it's just a calculation. Now, on the target side, the vulnerability usually comes down to 2 things. First, a very deep, very human need for validation. And second, falling into what psychologists call the empathy trap. And this is the critical mistake. We equate their insight with care. You think, wow, someone who understands me this deeply must have my best interests at heart. That feeling of being so completely seen is intoxicating, and it can blind you to all the massive red flags in their actual behavior.
All right, we have dissected the profile, we've taken apart the blueprint. Now it's time to shift from analysis to empowerment. Because knowing their strategy is one thing, but building an effective defense against it, that's everything. This next section is the most important one. It's all about constructing your personal defense system.
And this brings us right to the central challenge, doesn't it? The question at the heart of your defense. How in the world do you defend against an attack that has been custom-made just for you? An attack specifically designed to bypass your known defenses and exploit your most unique vulnerabilities. It can feel completely impossible, but the answer, believe it or not, is surprisingly simple, though I'm not saying it's easy. It requires a fundamental shift in your focus, away from what they want you to see and onto the only thing that actually matters.
Your primary defense, your shield, is something we're going to call the action versus feeling audit. This is a conscious, disciplined choice you have to make. It means you must learn to ignore that seductive, intoxicating feeling of being understood that they give you. You have to start treating their comforting words and their stunning insight into your soul as completely irrelevant noise. Instead, you have to focus relentlessly, exclusively on one thing: their actions and the results of those actions. You audit their behavior. Is it consistent? Is it ethical? And most importantly, what is their actual, measurable impact on your life? Do their actions consistently build you up, or do they consistently tear you down? In this audit, the feelings they create are irrelevant. The impact they have is everything.
And a huge part of this audit is learning to spot their favorite tool, the covert hook of conditional affection. We saw an example earlier, and the pattern is always the same: praise, immediately followed by a demand or a condition. It sounds like this: "You're the only one smart enough to handle this, which is why I need you to do this really hard thing for me." Or how about this: "I love how forgiving you are, so I know you'll understand why I have to cancel our plans again." See, it's a compliment with a hook in it. And once you start to recognize this pattern for what it really is, not genuine affection, but a transactional tool of manipulation, it's a total game changer.
So let's assemble your essential defense toolkit. First, the foundation. You have to commit to the action versus feeling audit as your main filter for what's real. Second, become an expert at spotting and rejecting conditional affection. Third, you have to build and enforce absolute, non-negotiable boundaries. A boundary isn't a request, it's a clear statement of what you will do. And finally, and this one is crucial, you must refuse to jade. JADE is an acronym: do not justify, argue, defend, or explain your boundaries. And why is that so important? Because when you jade, you are handing them fresh emotional data on a silver platter. You're explaining your vulnerabilities, your reasons, your fears. You are literally helping them update their psychological map of you. By refusing to jade, you starve them of the very data they need to manipulate you.
And that brings us to our final and most empowering section: neutralizing their power. Look, this isn't about trying to fight them on their terms. It's about making their primary weapon completely useless. Because once you put these defenses in place, you fundamentally change the entire dynamic of the relationship. If you take only one single thing away from this entire explainer, please let it be this sentence: empathy without conscience is not love. It is psychological surveillance. Read it again. Let it sink in. You have to fundamentally reframe what their insight actually is. It is not a gift of connection. It is the data gathering phase of an attack. Making that one mental shift is the foundation of your freedom.
So, let's bring this all together. First, you have to remember, the Dark Empath is considered the most dangerous personality for a reason. It's that unique toxic blend of insight and exploitation. Their entire strategy hinges on a predictable pattern. Their insight mapping lets them customize a campaign of targeted exploitation, which is specifically designed to create a deep dependency in their victim. But here's the thing: their power structure is surprisingly fragile. It all depends on one thing: you trusting their insight more than you trust their impact. And the moment you break that loop, the moment you commit to that action versus feeling audit and start prioritizing their consistent ethical actions over their comforting words, you dismantle their entire machine. The moment you start judging them by their impact, not their insight, their unique power over you simply disappears.